This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not. Repeat. This is not. This is advised to take the following steps. If exposed, remove clothes. Emergency broadcast system.
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.
Broadcasting live from a Chinese-made microphone high atop Sioux Nation, here with Devin DeLapp, where the D stands for Dank. How are you guys doing today?
I'm good.
Since you're not going to do your own intro, I'm just going to make one for you every episode. So, what's your middle initial?
For what? My name?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Really?
Yeah.
It's a bond. What is it? Kevin, Keith, Carrie?
No. You're never gonna guess it.
Give me a nationality to look into. Is it like a English name, British, where your parents trying to be pompous?
That's like a boy named Sue kind of stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Carrie?
No.
I already said Carrie. Karen. Are you a Karen?
No.
Oh, that would have been great.
Kelly.
Kelly's not really a girl's name.
No.
Sort
A
of
bunch of guys.
Nah,
It's a mix. It's just like my first name. It's frickin' unisex or whatever.
Devin?
Yeah, there's a lot of girls named Devin.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I recently found out that Corey means the chosen one. So, take that with a grain of salt.
Parents were reaching, I think. You know. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, we've got we got Clemens with us. Clemens, I didn't introduce you. I apologize.
That's all right.
I mean, you've been here now, what, 4 episodes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on all those shows. Even the horrible sounding Brad Olson episode, which was a disaster.
Well, what Brad was saying was more important. Like he's got a lot of.
That's true. It sounded like he was talking to Bumper.
I know. I wonder. I was like, man, I hope he didn't have a hard time like hearing me, because that would make sense why he didn't really
Right.
what my questions were.
Respond to
But,
any of
like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Yes. I didn't like the way he said Phantom Facts. Sort of, I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. Say that with a little more respect, Brad Olson. I think you've got an in for your book, though, Self-Proclaimed Guru. So, CC Publishing.
Yeah.
Check out some of the authors he sponsors there. Guys, we have got this whole story was brought about by experience you had, Clemens, a couple days ago at the bank, trying to get money out.
Oh yeah, it's a great time.
And I don't think most people realize this. Like when you go to the bank, and let's say you have a large amount of money, and you want to take it all out, or some of it, like let's say 80% of it out, or whatever it is, and then they tell you no. Like, what do you do from that point? Isn't that weird?
Well, it's like they don't necessarily tell you no straight out.
Right.
They're just looking at you like, what do you need it for? What are we doing?
Which would
Like,
that line of questioning would infuriate me from the like, what do you need to know what I need to do with it?
yeah, like it's my money, so like I need it.
Have you experienced this?
Me?
Yes.
You know what? I never have. Like, sometimes they'll be like more subtle on their question, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's just I'm gonna go buy some gold with it. I'll tell them because I don't care, because it's like I have nothing to hide. But I've had friends like when they go to get a large sum, like over 10,000. You know what I mean? Or they go to get like they're gonna pay cash for like a new truck from somebody, and they bought it for 25, and they're just gonna pay cash for the whole thing. He had to go to 3 different banks to get enough cash to go pay it. So he didn't get totally turned down. They just said you can't take out that much. Like you're gonna have to go to another branch, or if you come back in like 5 days, we can have it. But the banks don't really have that much cash in them at all.
Yeah, I had to call him first, or like I knew that ahead of time. So I called him like that morning and I was like, "Hey, I'm wanting to make this deposit. I get off work, like when's a good time? When will you have it available?" And over the phone they were like, "Oh yeah, no problem. No problem. Like just come in and we'll have that ready." So when I walked in and I asked for it, like they're asking me, what my plans were like with this money. So, it's not a big deal. So I told them like what I plan on doing with this money. And the guy just he just looked at me like, are you, I don't know. And then so he goes in the back and he grabs this other lady and she comes out and, she starts fiddling around on the computer. Now, this is like, I worked for this same place, right? So, like, I know what they're doing. And I'm just like, I'm just sitting back and I'm like, okay. And she then proceeds to start asking me the same questions. And they're asking me, like, well, how long is work gonna take? Like, how long did they say? Like, what all are they doing? And I'm like, listen, I don't know anything about electricity. So, like, what they're talking about is like, this is all I got to go off of. So, um, like, in the end, they eventually ended up, of course, giving me the money, but like not without going through 3 different people and like about 40 minutes of retelling the same reason why I need this money. Like it was crazy.
Is it like I don't want to get like in there, but is it like a big chain bank or is it more like one of those small credit unions or like a local branch?
Big
Like
chain.
Picture. I would say one of the biggest banks in America.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I could
Yeah.
just Devin. I almost want your wife to like secretly record, and you go and try to pull out money from a bank.
And
Call-
it was over 10,000. So
yeah,
like
so yeah, big chunk, and then just I'm curious what your experience would be.
It'd be interesting, wouldn't it? I don't.
and keep in mind
Can
too,
you
like,
imagine the first time? What do you need it for? What the fuck?
That's
keep in mind,
not
too, like,
really
I'm
any
not
of your
taking-
business.
I'm not taking like all my money out too. So just to clarify,
Yeah.
like I'm not draining the account by any means. Like there's still a decent chunk of money there. So that's why I'm just like, for what? Like, what do you need to know for?
You should have
Like,
said.
oh,
I
why am I
thought
not
you
getting
should have pulled the cliche. Like I thought I was in America.
Yeah. Well, this is like,
Like-
check this out. This is the funniest part too. They're like, well, couldn't you get a cashier's check? And I'm like, well, yeah, I could, but I prefer cash. And then they're like, well, don't you have personal checks? And I'm like, well, cash does clear faster than like a check does. And the lady who was tried saying like, well, and I'm like, come on now. Like I'm not even gonna entertain that because like we both know that if I were to bring cash in here, it would become available in my account right away. So we'll just leave it at that. And I was like, well, if this other person banked at the same bank, I would just go on your app and I would transfer the money that way. But they don't, so here we are.
Because you were wiping them out of cash. That's exactly why they were the way they are. Because if someone else like you comes in that same day and wants it, then they're like really like on a,
We can't
you know what I
do
mean?
it.
They're like, we really can't do that for you today.
Wasn't there a law that required banks to carry or have that, like the amount of money of accounts that they have, like in their vault? I mean, it's a little hard now because with
Like-
the online banking and that
like,
sort of thing. but-
Can't because like, okay, so of all the currency that's been created, there's only like, I think it's like 20 some percent that's in physical cash form of all the dollars that are being printed digitally, whatever. Only 20% exists physically. So if everybody really did try to go to the bank, they don't have it. It's all digital numbers. And you can Google that. You
So
can Google that and it'll
let's
tell you.
pause it because I know this, but I want to take you down my train of thought here of how we're getting to this subject about you went to the bank, tried to get a bunch of money. They threw a big fit, eventually gave you your money. But like Devin was saying, they don't have this cash on hand. It's all numbers now. And so I began to think of a very interesting story when I was in New York at a Russian household. and they were very welcoming people. Served us like this 5-course meal. Russians don't have dessert by culture, so they had like this delicious meal set, and then they finished it with a dessert of cream puffs. Like a bucket of cream puffs, like you get at Costco. Anyway, so and they had this, like, I don't know, he was like 9 or 10-year-old boy, Archon, and he takes me into his bedroom and he's like, "Hey, you want to see my savings box?" And I'm like, "Sure." And it's like this like cool little handmade wooden box, from the motherland, and he opens it up. He's like, and I'm expecting, he's like a kid. I'm expecting like, hey, here's 5, 10, 15. This kid's pulling out $50 bills, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. This kid had $1,400 just sitting in his wooden box. I'm just like, yeah, exactly. And so I mentioned it to the person that was teaching our Russian class. And he goes, well, you got to understand the culture. He goes, in 91, when the Soviet Union collapsed, everyone lost their money. And so to this day, no one trusts banks. And that came from that experience. And so they just keep the money on hand. It's just, it's their odds in their head are safer than that. Well, I went down this wormhole like 2 years ago of watching old Russian movies from the 80s. Because they got all English subtitles now. And in every one of those movies in the 80s, there was a scene where like a guy was getting robbed, it was like from Treasure Island, a cartoon of Treasure Island, to like this franchise series of this guy that was a time traveler. And in each movie, there was some sort of scene where a person was getting robbed and they broke the fourth wall and looked at the camera and said, "This is why you should always keep your money in the banks," and then they'd steal the rest of the money.
It's like, it reminds me of like the Great Depression, like with us, because there's been, how many stories have you heard about, people finding these old coffee cans hidden in walls in their old houses and stuff, because, that was the same thing. A lot of people lost their retirements and things like from the banks. So they stopped trusting banks and hiding their money, hiding their coins and stuff.
That's why that's exactly where my train of thought went was, that's sort of a version of propaganda, right? Because Russia was telling its citizens, you keep your money in the banks. And then when it collapsed, like 6 people got rich that day.
Oh, yeah.
Got really rich that day, and everyone else lost everything. And so when you talk about going to a bank, and, I'm not saying but if there was ever a bank run, they wouldn't I don't think they'd have the cash on hand. And it's like, when did this whole process start? And I know, Devin, this is like your baby right here.
I just know a lot about it. Yeah.
Well, and it's like, and it's good to know because, the Federal Reserve is created in 1913, correct?
Yep.
And the dollar is kept on the gold standard, but like it's 40%, like they have to have 40% gold to, it's not like $1 equals 1 ounce of gold. It like ends up being like, we have so many dollars in circulation so that it'll cover at least 40% of the gold we have. Something along those lines. I can't.
Well, they would keep, they still had a reserve, right? It wasn't like 100% reserve. It was like you're saying 40-ish%. It was enough that like if people wanted to go to the bank, because back then you could take your dollar notes and all they were just promises in gold, right? A claim check is another way to say it. So like you could take $20 back then, go to the bank, and they would give you $20 worth of gold. Like legit coinage back and forth. It's actually kind of sweet. So like even in the like Depression days, like $35 an ounce or whatever, you took $35 to the bank, they would give you an ounce of gold.
Okay. So with that in mind, Mike, you talked about the Great Depression, right?
Yeah.
So Great Depression happens, and then America's starting to come out of it in the early 30s, right? But it's a slow, really painful regrowth.
Yeah.
Roosevelt comes along and makes promises to rebuild America with the New Deal.
Huge savior, like from the time. Like he was like a hero back in the day.
I fucking hate that piece of shit. He is
wow.
terrible. He was like
Well-
anti-freedom. Like, hey, let's take as much power from the people as we can. We are here for you.
But I mean, I get it. But
He
he
like
also-
his
he
policies
was-
actually extended the depression by like 10 fucking years.
All right. I've got videos and newspaper clippings, and we could go through this because this is really where it all starts.
Yeah, what a piece of shit though. Like, you know what?
Well,
I'm
I
gonna run
mean-
for a third term. I know it's not
All right,
normal.
whatever.
Yeah, I want to be king until I die, you fucking non-walking bitch.
Well, he did. I mean, he did.
I know they passed an amendment so no other president could do it because they're like, fuck this guy.
Okay, so I've got a couple of videos and a couple of newspaper clippings of what was happening. So for his campaign, Franklin Roosevelt would do these what were called fireside chats, which is interesting because when we have nothing to talk about, we call them dumpster fire chats. So I feel like we have a connection to Roosevelt unknowingly already. Anyway, so Roosevelt wins the election, promising to think only of America and so on and so forth. You know, the great politician promises. But I've got video of his inauguration speech, and there's a section in there which is very interesting because he talks about the banking institution. And Devin, I just wanted you to hear. Well, I want both of you guys to hear it, but I'd love to hear your like takes on what he's saying here. And this is, I guess, the inauguration used to be in March, so you had to wait like 5 months before you could take power after winning an election, which is just sort of a interesting thing. Anyway,
They just want to be nice weather, you know. They're just like, fuck the winter time.
God dang it, your antivirus thing. Yes, we're good. All right, here we go.
Love that thing.
Can you hear that?
No.
Okay, that's why I checked.
Oh.
A sec here. Oh, you guys are so good when I'm struggling here. Let me sweat it out. Like, the ginger has failed.
Just
It's actually quite interesting what actually caused the depression too. Like you can get into that, but that's separate from what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. But what I was going to say about Roosevelt, though, is like, you know, I don't know, maybe I give him too much of the benefit of the doubt, but like he was a guy that, you know, given the circumstance of the country and the status the country was in when he took over, is like, that's kind of, I don't want to say I put a lot of weight into that, but I put a lot of consideration on that. As
Yeah, I mean, maybe he put like price controls on stuff, like stuff that's proven to never work. He was doing and just prolonged it. You know, Social Security, like doing that. I'm like, okay. I mean, some people do need, you know, that's not a bad thing. And they got corrupted after he was there. But just so there's a lot of stuff he did that I was just like, bro.
Yeah, there was a lot of good, but yeah, there was a lot of like, what was that for?
All right, here we go. It's because I had a different. That's interesting. Learning. All right, you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going full screen.
Nation is asking for action, and action now. Our greatest primary task is to put people to work. This is no unsolvable problem if we face it wisely and courageously. It can be accomplished in part by direct recruiting by the government itself, treating the task as we would treat the emergency of a war, but at the same time, through this employment, accomplishing greatly needed projects to stimulate and reorganize the use of our great natural resources. Hand in hand with that.
All right.
So-
All right.
It's classic. It's classic. We're in a downturn. You know what we're going to do? Government projects. Let's build some
Yeah.
dams and some roads. Like create jobs, which, it did work back then because they actually paid people real money.
Well, the roads in Colorado are made by those men that, like they cut those forest roads and all of that stuff. Cut trails everywhere out there in the Rockies. Made all sorts of paths out to the west. Here's the thing. The reasoning, he said, is that this is as dangerous as wartime conditions. So that's what gave him the executive power to do whatever he want. And that was his legal standing. He's saying that right in the inauguration. It's not like this guy is being sneaky about it. That's what I find odd about Roosevelt. It's not super sneaky like the speech, but you want to listen to a little bit more? Yep. Okay.
We must frankly recognize the overbalance of population in our industrial centers, and by engaging on a national scale in a redistribution, endeavor to provide a better use of the land for those best fitted for the land.
Get your asses out of the city into the country,
can be helped
folks.
by definite efforts to raise the values of agricultural products, and with this the power to purchase the output of our cities. It can be helped by preventing realistically the tragedy of the growing loss through foreclosure of our small homes and our farms. It can be helped by insistence that the federal, the state, and the local governments act forthwith.
Okay. Well, there's our first comment of the day. I guess we put Devin in charge of reading the comments from the stream. That's seems like proper.
Is this the same dude that dressed in ladies' clothes, or the fat fuck that couldn't fit in the tub?
Oh,
the
God,
fat fuck that couldn't fit in the tub was Taft there, May.
Yeah. Way to insult your history.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You want to get down to it too, between like Taft and like Theodore Roosevelt. Like they were both like, if I remember correctly, Teddy Roosevelt actually was like a JP Morgan guy, and Taft was a Rockefeller guy. Like that's who was backing them. Broke my heart.
Okay, so speaking of broken hearts, a lot of people don't realize this about American history. I suppose I should take down the comment as we move on. A lot of people don't realize this about. So he comes into power March 4th, 1933. On April 5th, he passes Executive Order 6102, which is Devin.
The suspension of the right of U.S. citizens to own gold.
No,
In essence.
Why would you do that?
Because
it's like a Scrooge McDuck thing. Like it's all mine.
Because all right. So like back then, I'm just ad-libbing. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
No,
but
you're
like,
fine. I got
sure
numbers to back you up. So
gold was like $20 an ounce, right?
2067.
2067 for 1 ounce of gold. So he gave a timeline of when people could return because like I said, you could go to the banks and like return your notes and get gold, physical gold in return, right?
Yep.
They didn't have enough gold in the banks. And so what he wanted to do, they didn't have the money for it because back then gold is money, right? And the only way you can get more gold is to fucking mine it or take it from people. So when he passed this executive order, you had up to a certain date to turn your gold into the banks. They would give you $20.67 for your gold.
There. You can see it right there on the screen.
Yeah, they would give you like the $20.67 for your gold, but you weren't allowed to have it in possession anymore. You had to give it. You had to turn it over and get US dollars back. And then you had a certain date, and then after that date hit, if you were holding SML, it was like considered a felony. Like
10-year prison sentence.
Yeah.
10-year prison sentence if you held any gold.
Yeah, so you're not just making innocent people who just own gold, not jewelry. Okay, so if you had jewelry, you were fine. But if you had anything else, bullion, coins, whatever, he pretty much made everybody a criminal after that date if you didn't like turn it into your government.
So a lot of people would melt it down into jewelry.
Yeah, if Yeah, if people were smart and they're like, fuck you, they would just make like a bunch of rings, whatever. Some people did do that too, by the way. Like not everybody turned their gold in.
Well, if if the Federal Reserve notes are just notes based on gold, then yeah. I mean, I
Well, if you look at
myself
like
would be a little like, I don't. Why should I turn in my gold? Like, why do you want?
old currency will actually say gold certificate or silver certificate because you could also get silver, right? They even had that price. I believe it was $1 for dollar. I believe like $1 got you $1 silver coin.
It's a double eagle. I think a double eagle was
right, something like that.
And then an eagle was $10, and then half eagle was $5, and then a quarter eagle was $2.50.
Right. So anyways, you have up to that date. And then what they did once that date expired, they revalued the price of gold per ounce. In essence, just inflating it whatever percent. So they moved it to like $35 an ounce or whatever.
So take a look at this. This is the newspaper from the Washington, D.C. Evening Star. The day after this legislation is passed. Let me go add this guy here. This is from the Evening Star. This is from the Library of Congress. You guys see that all right?
Yeah, I can see that.
All right. So I'm going to go for front page. I was like, I just wanted to find a news article from it, right? Look at here,
Yeah.
right here. Right here's the front page.
Yeah.
Evening Star. You do-
What?
so he was calling
Give me all
these.
your gold.
You would call, yeah. If you held your gold, you're considered a hoarder
Wow.
and wants you to turn it in.
What does this say right here? Woodini. Can someone Google that? I can Google it too. I think it's fine.
Woodini?
Yeah, Woodini. That must have been a derogatory nickname towards him. I had just seen that. So, yeah. Yes. I love old newspaper articles like that. You see this? I posted some of this on Twitter. Hoarders to face sentence or fines unless all gold is backed by May 1st. This is leading the headlines right here. Roosevelt orders all yellow metal over $100 held by individuals returned to the Federal Reserve System. $10,000 penalty set up with 10-year terms.
Jeez.
Exceptions listed in order include industries and amounts earmarked for foreign governments or financial institutions.
So it makes me wonder: are they gonna do this like when because they keep pushing now for a cashless society? So like, are they gonna push this like where no, you don't need cash or change or anything, just bring that all to the banks, stop hoarding it?
Well, in this, look at what they did. Like, you guys saw this list of the gold prices, and Devin, you talked about this, but I got the list here. You can see it. So here's 1932, right?
Mm-hmm.
He makes, and this same as 1933. He makes everyone turn in their gold, pays them $20.67 an ounce of gold they turn in. Everyone turns in their gold, right? The next year, it goes to 32.32. And then the next year it goes to 35. And then now this is interesting because I've heard 36, but let's even 35, whatever, like
yeah.
It goes to 30. No, it does go to 35. Yeah. So within a year period after buying everyone's gold, it shoots up to $35 an ounce. So you robbed $15 an ounce per ounce, so that's, hundreds of dollars. So, that's.
It's like 80% jump in it. No,
which would make sense because the more gold you hold, like if you control like the prices, then the more gold you hold, the higher you'd want that price because then your stash is worth more.
Well, and
in essence, what he did was he reduced the purchasing power of every single American.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what he did. That's all inflation is. Like, that's why I get fucking so annoyed when I see like inflation is at 10%. Remember, and people don't even understand what inflation really is. Inflation is a loss of your purchasing power. It's because they printed so much money. It takes now, You know what I mean? Because you have nothing. It's just it's the
Paper.
government that's causing it, everybody. I'm sorry, but it is.
Well, and what caused this situation where everyone was on board? Like everyone was on board with this, Devin. That's I mean, that's the crazy part of it.
Well, it's because, for the greater good of the country, really. I mean, if you separate it from country to individual, for a country to pull itself up by the bootstraps, it's like doing that in essence actually is what pulled us out of the Great Depression, because of all the other stuff they had done. They had to do what they did to like kind of fix it, which they at least came to their senses and did it. Now they fucked over the individual to save the greater country, right?
So you think it was just a justifiable
He should
means?
have done it sooner. Like, I don't agree with him taking everybody's gold, right? Like, maybe you should like look at the reason why you had to do it and maybe fix that. You know what I mean? Why are we having to take everybody's gold when you should have fucking flogged the people that created the mess that made you take everybody's gold? But see, like now, like you were asked that question, what do you see him doing it again? I don't, because back then, gold wasn't like a tradable commodity that was free floating. Like it was just, I mean, it was backed. You could get it and it was real money and you could buy stuff with it, but it wasn't something you speculated with because it was set. So that's why they didn't have inflation back then. That's why milk cost 25 cents and it cost 25 cents for a gallon of milk for fucking 20 years, because the price of gold was the same price for 20 years or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Devin, I want you to continue that thought. I know. But we have to read comments, so get it over with.
Imagine dropping the soap in prison and you realize you should have handed over your golden stick. I don't know, like, of any cases of people actually getting sent to prison. I have never researched it. I don't know how many people did. You know what I mean?
I came across this clip with Roosevelt talking about how safe it is to keep your money in the bank. You guys want to see it? It's like 14 seconds.
This is back when everybody just trusted blindly.
I mean, is it a trust blindly, or were times that bad? Like, can we not imagine those? I don't know.
Motherfucker, you had to like get your news from the paper or go to the fucking you go to the theater and like listen to the wall. Here's the updates. You know what I mean?
I can assure you, my friends, that it is safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than it is to keep it under the mattress.
So that's why this guy's a piece of shit. He's just blatantly lying to everybody.
You think that was a blatant lie, huh?
The central bank is like, the reason why it took him to 1913 to get it is because Jefferson, the only reason he ran for president is so that they wouldn't, because they were trying to make a central bank even way back when America was first founded. And they knew that was a bad thing. So like Jefferson ran just to keep it from happening. Same thing with Andrew Jackson. They were trying to establish a central bank. Andrew Jackson ran and kept the central bank from happening.
Roosevelt were famous.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Okay. Anyway. Well, I mean, okay, so let's say that is the case, Devin. Let's say that we got off the gold standard. I mean, when he confiscated all the gold and did that start the process, or was it just the beginning of the Federal Reserve that started the process of America eventually getting off the gold standard?
The Federal Reserve is what caused the actual depression, like their central bank authority and creating currency, and like because they just printed more than they had gold.
So was it like an oligarchy? I mean, because all a bank is a reserve of, like you were saying.
Federal Reserve is owned, if you actually look at the bylaws or whatever, the Federal Reserve, it's actually owned by the banks, like the major banks. But who owns the banks?
The rich people.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is they actually get to earn interest on money they created from the taxpayer. So we pay them. They actually collect checks like from the U.S. government as taxes on the money they created for the government.
That's why
from nothing.
When the government bailed out the banks, that's why I didn't like it, because essentially what you're saying is the rich people can't lose any money. Like only, if we decide to invest and we lose, then we're asked out, right? Like we lose.
Yeah.
But if a bank were to take risks and lose, the government essentially steps in and is like, no, like they can't lose. But like I think what's happening is the government will step in, replace that money, but then just print more and not really
Right.
take
They're just,
anything out of
well,
their
what I
risk.
say, I call it papering over, right? So like any
Yeah.
losses, they don't want deflation. So
Right.
like the part of
They
the
want
reason why
inflation.
we got different currency than we had back in 1933, like we're talking
Yeah.
about, right? Back then, gold money was still attached to gold. So even after he did that and adjusted the price, yes, there was crazy inflation and stuff because everything had to adjust to the new price of everything. But it's settled, right? And then World War II happens. And what happened there was because of the war, the same thing kind of happened in World War One. The other countries were at war first. The U.S. wasn't in war. And almost everybody's currency back then was backed by gold. Everybody's currency was backed by something, but in times of war, you can't run deficits. You can't run deficits on currency that's backed by something hard because the only way you can create more of it is to mine it, right? If your money's linked to gold, the only way you can create more dollars essentially is go mine some more gold. So all these countries go to war and they switch an emergency deal to fiat currency like we all have now. So they can try to buy weapons of war, all that stuff. Well, they're buying all this shit from us because we're just making it. We're not in the war yet, but we need gold. We want gold for our shit. We don't have fiat dollars.
Well, and didn't we promise to hold on to a nation's gold? We're like, hey, man, we'll play middleman.
That was afterwards. That was after
was-
we like won. They established that. But like all those countries that were at war were practically, in essence, sending their gold to us because they needed to buy tanks. They needed to buy guns. They're getting bombed the fuck out of Germany. They need our stuff. So we were, in essence, collecting lots of gold. And in the end, it really actually brought us out of depression because of all the influx of gold. Then we get attacked and then we switch to a fiat for a little while as well. Or we like say, okay, everybody, you don't have to pay us back yet, but when this is all over, we're going to balance our books. Right. And so that's why that's what brought us out.
Well,
When we finish the war, we make it to where the dollar is the world reserve currency. This is just how it's going to be. And the dollar is linked to gold. But everybody else is just whatever dollars you have and mint. Like your price will fluctuate to the dollar. But in essence, the whole world was linked to gold through the US dollar.
So, Clemens, you found this stat here from the gold confiscated due to Executive Order 6102 was over 20. It was 2,665 metric tons of gold that got confiscated. So the equivalent to $171 billion in Federal Reserve notes using the recent spot gold price of 2,000. Jesus Christ! Did you do all that math there? Or did you copy and paste that?
Oh, that was a copy and paste.
Okay.
I was going to say, I want to check the math on it.
That's
I am very good.
just wrote numbers here. Here, I got another little clip here. I thought you guys might like to see here. Share my screen.
On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt would come out with Executive Order 6102, aka the Gold Ban. All U.S. citizens were required to deliver all of their gold coins, gold bullions, and gold certificates worth in excess of $100 to the Federal Reserve by May 1st. In return, the Federal Reserve would pay them $20.67 per ounce. If people hung onto their gold and the authorities found out, they could be put in prison for up to 10 years and or fined $10,000, or about $167,000 today. You might be thinking that this itself is outrageously unfair, but just wait until you hear what happened next. In January of 1934, after the majority of the gold was collected, the Department of Treasury would change the price of gold from $20.67 to $35 per ounce. So, the government basically forced the people to give up all of their gold for a cheap price, and once they collected all the gold, they jacked up the price. This is of course extremely unfair to the people who held gold, but it seemed like it was the best decision for the country as a whole. Former gold owners were understandably not satisfied by this explanation, and many of them would sue the government. One such court case was Perry versus the United States. John Perry, who used to own a $10,000 gold bond, argued that he was basically ripped off by the U.S.
I mean, that's fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hey, US ripped me off. He lost in a 4-5 decision, by the way.
Just I hate.
Of course, because he's suing the very people that ripped him off. So they're gonna be like,
Yeah.
let me see. Did we do wrong?
It doesn't look like it. Look like we're doing pretty good here.
You don't like to move to another country, you do like.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go deliberate about it. We're gonna drink some coffee. We're gonna eat some food. We're gonna charge the taxpayers more money for our meal, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna be like, nah.
They had to say no because if he won, then everybody gets paid. You know what I'm saying? They couldn't
Exactly.
afford that because they already set the price to like try to fix everything. Now, if they got to pay all those dudes
Yeah, give back
reparations in a
$100,000.
way, right? Like lost investment, then they're back where they were.
Let's keep it.
All right, here's 1971. Richard Nixon, another fan favorite of Devin's. This is pretty much a trigger
man.
Devin episode right here, isn't it?
Okay.
My apologies, Devin. I didn't.
I
All right, let's
like
let's
this guy.
go back. Who does? You guys ready?
In 1971, President Nixon would announce the U.S. would no longer exchange dollars for gold.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Well,
Fuck
that
everybody
seems-
else. That's pretty much what he said.
That seems fair. What's the matter with that?
It's because okay, so like fast forward through a lot of shit from the end of World War II, right? Euros is world reserve currency backed by gold at $35 an ounce, 36, whatever, you know. There's really no inflation, hardly any. Get to Vietnam War. They start printing more money than they have gold to back to pay for it. The other countries in this are becoming privy to it because back in the day, they could just the same thing. Their international trade, they could take their US dollars and request physical gold for it. Right. And so France was the first one to do it. So France is like, I'm sus that they printed more than they have gold for. So they send a fucking battleship with loaded with their US dollars and they want gold for it.
Really?
Yeah, because they know that there's more dollars than gold, so they want their gold out of there, right? And so then that's when Nixon's like, so Fort Knox is actually getting emptied out from all these countries that are like claiming their gold back, like selling the US dollars, and it's just bad. I mean, he did the right thing for America. He did. However, when he did that, he decoupled all currency in the world for the first time in history. All currency is no longer backed by anything. They're all fiat, and they all, depending on how much they print.
I don't know what
how
that
much the other
term
guy
means.
prints.
Fiat.
It's an acronym, and I don't remember it right off the top
Okay,
of my
well,
head.
Clemens will work on it because we got yet another message that self-proclaimed guru has to read from Chris May.
I'm Devin, and I love old dirty Dick Nixon. What are you doing?
Better than that. Right?
Come on, man.
Come on.
I am not a crook.
Oh man, that'd be a great little sound clip, wouldn't it?
You know, and keep in mind though, like you're exactly right on what happened, but it wasn't just people from overseas. Like this is a lot of rich people in America too, like funneling gold out of Fort Knox. Well, allegedly, but
No,
you know,
citizens
with-
couldn't
with
do it.
another-
That was actually
with another-
illegal to own gold until like Woodrow Wilson. I think Woodrow Wilson makes it legal for humans. U.S.
It was 41
US
years. 1933 to 19. So 41 years from 1933 is what?
Yeah, you could own like some gold jewelry, but you could not buy gold bullion as a U.S. citizen. It was illegal. Isn't that
63.
nuts?
63? No.
But-
73.
so other
Who was
countries-
president in 73? 74. It'd been 74.
Yeah, it was after Nixon,
More.
right? Yeah.
19, who came after Nixon? Okay. Clemens is on it. Be great for another question from Chris May. But no, he's
Right.
just got
here it says fiat money is a government issued currency that is not backed by a commodity such as gold. Fiat money gives central banks greater control over the economy because they can control how much the money is printed.
Damn it, you gotta slow down. All right. Sunday
What?
morning. Why you fucking
I'm a fast reader.
Yeah, calm it down. All right. Well, that's I did not catch a goddamn thing you just said.
Okay. Fiat, I don't call it money because it's fucking not. Fiat currency is a government issued currency that isn't backed by anything.
Okay.
It gives central banks greater control because they can just print or they can control how much is printed and try to do inflation. Because only reason inflation exists is because of currency creation. And it allows governments to run a deficit. So like whenever you hear we have like a $1.5 trillion deficit, that just means after all taxes collected, we're still short 1.5 trillion. It's got to come from somewhere. And they just print it in the form of bonds. And the Federal Reserve buys it, or some of our allies, whatever, they buy US bonds. And we just borrow all that money every year. So that's why we have a $33 trillion, $34 trillion debt.
So then what happens when BRICS, Brazil, India, China, Russia, and South Africa all can now obtain a currency backed by gold?
I've been following that for a while. BRICS started in 2011, something like that. They even have their own bank. I think it's called the NFB. It's their form of a world bank for them, I guess, because you have the IMF, which is International Monetary Fund, which actually will settle payments too. But the way the U.S. Reserve dollar works, all countries have to use the dollar to trade back and forth, and that's how we've gotten our dominance, right? And so it gives the U.S. it still gives us pretty much an unfair advantage. We can dictate policy about it. We have the SWIFT payment system where countries settle.
Doesn't matter if people are going to not use the SWIFT payment system and they back their system by gold and just trade. Who would want to trade to something that's not tied to currency versus something that's actually tied to gold?
Our enemies, I guess, if you want to go to that extreme, and let's call them that, you know what I mean? But they do have issues because they're not all the same culture. They are separate countries with their own separate currencies. Do I think it's possible that they could come out with their own currency? Yes, but they're going to have to really. India doesn't trust China, even though they're kind of in an alliance together, right? They don't. So I think India is going to be more we can't allow China to have all the power. We need something. So a lot of stuff I've been researching on it. They need to get their payment system fucking fixed first. Make that legit. They do have 20 some other countries that want to join them. They do have almost half to almost over half the world's population amongst those countries. I think you will see the dollar lose its dominance on a global scale, but it won't be overnight. And they have to be careful because if they go too hard too fast, US will figure out how to take them down. Because it's an act of war really against the U.S. I would like to see real money come back. I don't know if I want to see it in the hands of Russia and China. I'd prefer the U.S. just took the reins for a little while and try to figure out a way to create currency out of.
You're not talking you're talking in wishful tones over there.
I don't think
because it's not going to happen.
I don't think it's going to their little summit they're going to have next month.
Who?
The BRICS nations. So they get together every year, and it rotates between all 5 of them, where they all meet, and they're going to talk about things. And I believe they really do want a currency, but and I'm not saying it's impossible, but if they're going to do it, they just need to do it very secretively and then just bam, lay it out there.
Well, they're saying this next month it's going to go into effect.
I saw it. Well, let's see what I was reading about India. It was nah. But that could be just a lot of jaw flapping for India because they don't want to piss off the US or Europe.
How did India act during the Cold War? I did some research on it, and it said that they pretty much played both sides because they just didn't want to be involved. So one side was yeah, come on over, America. And then Russia, hey, can we do stuff here too? Hey, you can do stuff here too. That's fine.
At a certain point, you're going to have to pick. But let's say they do. They create a currency that is backed by gold.
Why would you not pick the currency backed by gold? That's all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, you would.
China's
what
got
is-
great resources, not just gold, but I mean great resources to build a great military. They got enough people to throw away that they can just throw them in factories and get it all done in 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I really believe the U.S. knows how to if this happens, this is our counter, and the counter will be they'll do the same thing.
What's that? We already have our own currency. So what do you mean?
They'll back it by gold. They'll change it. It'll still be $1, but it'll go back to the older form.
So then wouldn't they have to like confiscate everyone's gold?
No, they
You don't
just
think
would
so?
have to reprice gold.
To what? $22,000 a
Well,
pound?
I think last number I saw was 30-some thousand an ounce. It would have to be to cover all M2 money created. Yes. They could go low. If they price it too low, it'll
What
create a massive
prevents them?
deflation.
That would, but they would have to pay out because then there would be a gold rush, where everyone's dumping gold all of a sudden, and
If you set the price right, it won't matter. As long as you don't overcreate current, like you have to stop the deficit spending. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to run an honest budget, right? Like if you do the price too low, there's gonna be massive deflation. But if you let the shit settle, it'll settle out. If you go too high, it'll create a big inflation, but it'll settle out. But the problem is governments don't like it because then they have to be honest and they can't run deficits. They have to be like within budget, stuff like that. So like deflations are bad. Like a deflation would be terrible for the US, especially with 30-some trillion in debt, because what that does is it makes the debt cost more. It takes more to pay off the debt. And that's why they want inflation, because if they get inflation, that shit they borrowed is easier to pay off because they have, you know what I mean? Makes the debt cheaper. Deflation is good for the individual, terrible for governments. And so it's very interesting what's happening. And we could have a new, it's so weird because it's hard to predict anything, because it can go from light speed changes to it just slow and steady. The same problems we had 10 years ago. You know what I mean? I'm surprised how far they've been able to kick the can down the road, but
it's no more. It's our generation's gonna have to deal with this crap. They always said that too. Why would we put this on our kids?
Well, that's why when you see like the deficit, it's more every year. It was 1 trillion back, a couple years ago. We had a $1 trillion. What are we at now? 1.5. It'll be more next year. It'll be 1.75, 2 trillion. Like, and it's exponential. So like it goes from like a little drop. Like this guy had this really great analogy. It's like, imagine a stadium, like a bowl stadium, like the Rose Bowl. You know what I mean? And you start off with a drop of water, but every year you double the amount of water.
Right.
And 2 drops. It takes a long time to get to a third full or like a quarter full. They don't take very long to fucking fill that bitch up on the back end. You know what I mean? It takes a long time to like get it to where it's going, and then it's exponential growth. So then now you're a quarter full stadium, and you're freaking half, and then it's overflowing. And I believe that's where we are now. Like before, it was like, oh, we got a $200 billion deficit. And it's 500. Now it's 750. We got $1 trillion. Now we're at 1.5. And
Well, it's like that garbage pile that just keeps adding up, right? Like, and unless you do something about it,
it gets worse.
actually do something about it, all you're doing is working on building that pile even higher and higher and higher and higher. Because
Guys, I don't know why you're stressed about this, because Kamala Harris, our fearless vice president, has given us a way out of this entire mess. Did you guys see this yesterday?
no,
Really?
Suck your dick to the top like she did.
Whoa. Oh, God dang it. Devin, we were doing something. All right. This is what Kamala Harris said.
I'm surprised she didn't laugh through most of it.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
We just gotta reduce population, guys.
Oh my god.
That's all we gotta do here. Let's do
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population,
That's it.
we invest to reduce population. More of our children can breathe clean air. Reduce population. More of our children can breathe clean air.
So what do you want?
Clean
Reduce
water.
population or more children?
Look! Did you hear? Did
She's
you
so
hear
fucking-
everyone applaud afterwards too? They're like, "Yeah, no, you're right. You're right."
Yeah, I'm
Reduce
sorry.
it.
You're not gonna get like the
Official-
Indians.
No,
you know what I mean, like India with 1 billion people, just to be like, oh, yeah, we don't want no future. We don't want any children.
Well, you don't have to do it that way. You just have to have Bill Gates buy a bunch of farmland over there and come up with his own plans for figuring.
See, like, you can't worry about the macro so much, you know.
That's not a worry. I'm just saying that's what's happening.
Like globally, like I mean, if the trends keep going the way it is, and like say at the summit they do I mean, Saudi Arabia is what's really
Yeah, they're teetering on whether OPEC is going to go into it or not.
I
If
feel like
OPEC
they have
goes
too
into it-
many dollars, okay? They have so many
They
US
got a lot of
dollars.
gold. They got a lot of gold.
Yeah, that's just true. Have you ever seen the movie Rollover?
No.
It's a 1981 movie. It has Jane Fonda in it, and got a couple heavy hitter actors. The one guy was a country singer. Yeah, they played Whistler for fucking Blade with Wesley Snipes was the Daywalker, fucking vampire.
Oh, yeah, the vampire. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the old guy,
No.
that guy, he's a country singer too. I cannot remember his fucking name. He's in that movie.
Robertson?
Yes.
No.
He's in it, but it's pretty much about the Saudis losing faith in the US dollar because this movie came out like after Nixon took us off gold, right? So like if you guys, I don't know if you know, but like through the 70s there was mass inflation.
Yeah.
It was like really crazy because it's because of how much dollars they created for the war. And then when gold became free trading, it even went crazy in silver, and like the price went from like $35 to $36 an ounce to fucking $800 for gold within like 10 years. You know, silver went from $1 to 50, you know what I mean, for an ounce. And it's all because everybody was afraid of like not being backed by gold. A lot more people were more savvy about it then. Like everybody realized like that gold was money, right? And this movie came out right after all that had happened. And so they pretty much were showing what would happen is if the Saudis gave up on the dollar, and it ends up going nuts. It's a cool movie.
What's it called again?
Rollover. I think
Rollover.
I think you can watch it. Someone's got it on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it.
It's
Sounds
not
good.
a high quality film, like his film was like, you know, filming, but it's 1981. But it's a good movie. But it was very much that premise. Like that shows you how long the Saudis have had money. Since 81, everybody was like, they have so much they could ruin us. You know what I mean? And they've had this tight relationship with the U.S. ever since because the U.S. understands that we need them. And if they join BRICS, then hey, man, no gloves are off.
So
Is it Chris Christopherson?
we're good.
Christopherson?
Yeah, Chris Christopherson. He's a part of the what's that Johnny Cash song with Ghost
Yeah,
Rider
yeah,
in the
yeah.
Sky?
Yeah.
He's one of the Ghost Riders in the Sky. He does one of the verses in it. They're old time buds. But he went to Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah, that's a fun episode, guys. Everyone's happy, huh?
Yeah.
Good shit.
I was just saying, you know, people
It happened
need to
before, though.
learn-
That's the thing.
people need to learn where their money comes from, or currency, or like what it means. And
And you say that there might be, you know, if we end up like going to a gold standard, like, you know, would there be a gold craze? And it's like, well, it makes me wonder if that whole thing's going to happen again, where like if we go back to a gold standard where, you know, I mean, like the government's going to be like, oh, bring us all your gold, and it's going to be illegal to possess it.
they
Yeah.
could. And if you're worried about it, buy fucking gold jewelry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and technically, if
Well,
you
not
had held
technically.
on to that gold for 41 years,
Yeah. Or buried it in your backyard
you know,
or in the wall of your house.
the government could come out and be like, "Hey, this is just a long-term investment now, fellas, and you just can't, you know, cash in until 41 years now." And Otherwise, you go to prison for 10 years. And we'll take the gold. So
There's that.
there's that
So,
too. That's sort of
Yeah, that's why I also believe that like silver could be, a nice hedge on the backside.
I see. I don't think silver is because, and
I think
tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, but this is my thinking on it, right? So
You're
we
wrong.
I was just going to say that.
Just
You're wrong.
All right, go ahead.
And we have an abundance of silver mines that are pre-made in Colorado, especially a lot in Colorado, and elsewhere too. Utah, crap ton of silver everywhere throughout the U.S. And I was working for a electrician out there in the mountains, and he told me that they closed all of those mines down in the 80s, not because they were empty, but because they had hit such huge veins that they just didn't want to tap into any of it. So it's cheaper for them to pay Mexico for silver at their labor cost than it is to mine our own silver. And so the belief is we just use Mexico silver. And so my thinking is when gold and precious metals do go up, not saying that silver won't go up, but it's like they could easily overinflate the market and snap of their fingers with silver.
The industrial use of silver is fucking massive. And
Solar power is huge they use a ton of silver.
it's like, God, some of the stuff I've been watching about it.
But if you're
Over half-
talking about an economy crash, right?
I'm just saying it's not an easily replaced. It's not like they can just go there tomorrow and they can start pumping silver out in a month. Like they have all kinds of stuff they have to do, like infrastructure wise, freaking permitting. I mean, you're
Well,
talking
it's government
it could
stuff.
take like a year to 5 years for a mine to like get back up to full operation, man.
Yeah.
And
no shit.
historical averages of gold in the ground and silver in the ground is for every ounce of gold, there's about 16 ounces of silver. Just in existence.
Well, and you look at
And if
that.
you look at the
of
price,
gold. Yeah, you
you
just look at the price of gold itself, not even silver.
Silver isn't 1/16 the price of gold. It's like 1/80th. For the longest time, it was like 1/16 the price.
I thought it
Even
was
back
up
when
to 35.
even back when gold was $20 an ounce, like silver was only 1/16 the price. And like, you know what I mean? It was like that for a long time. Then all of a sudden now we're at this huge disparity. In my opinion, it's not financial advice, to your own research, everybody. Silver is the most undervalued asset in the fucking world right now.
$25.18 an ounce right now. Yeah. It's
Triple
Below.
digit silver, in my opinion, in the future is a no brainer. When it'll happen, not sure, but it's gonna.
Yeah, here's
It'll
the
rue the
price.
day when you say, "Oh yeah, Devin was right. It's like 200 some an ounce."
I'm a big fan of silver.
Well, and I don't claim to, I don't claim to
It's
know.
worth researching. Like, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of great like YouTube content about like what's silver production on an annual basis for the world. I mean, they track all those numbers and how much is going to industrial use and how much is going into like a bullion investor. Like, you know what I
I
mean?
think China uses the most silver.
Solar
Yeah.
uses like, I just Googled it this morning. It's like 22 grams per panel. And there's like 36 grams in an ounce, if I remember right. Something like that. So it's almost like
20
half,
Yep.
about half to 3/4 of an ounce of silver is used in a solar panel.
You see this huge spike in 2011 where silver
Yeah, where it
goes
went to 50.
18, and then it shoots up to 47, 30. Yeah, maybe a little higher than that. I think. But yeah,
Yeah.
50.
Yeah.
What was that spike cost from?
That's after the 2008. So look at your little chart there. When was 2008 financial crisis?
2008 right here. It's
Mhm.
at 18.
That's what caused it, the like lack of trust in the banks. And gold had
But,
a big
I mean-
run up. Gold had a huge run up then too.
We're looking at April 18th, 2011, when silver goes up to $50.
Yeah,
So 3 years after the collapse.
right. Silver and gold are not sexy investments. They are long term. You know, they'll ride the same, they'll dip, they'll go low, but every once in a while they reaccount for their value and then they jump up in price and then they'll have a new normal.
New
price.
plateau, yeah,
Yeah.
for a
Right.
while.
And then they'll plateau for a while and then they'll maybe adjust again and go crazy. I'm kind of surprised they've been able to keep the price down with as much gold as the central banks have been buying, to be honest. And that just tells me that a lot of people just aren't buying it. Like,
so 1995,
citizens.
we're at 382.
Yeah.
Right. We have our first spike in 2006 where it goes to 611.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have another spike that goes to 924. 2008 in the crash, it goes down to 800 and then spikes. Why would it go down to 800 at the same time of the crash?
Okay, so what happens is a lot of times when there's like a big stock market crash or like just say there's a crash in bonds, whatever, like usually if there's like a big paper like crash, they need liquidity to pay off their bets. Like, so especially if people are going long or short and they're getting their margin calls. A lot of these people have physical metal sitting there and they need the capital to pay their margin call. And so you'll see a dip because that price is based off of the paper gold, paper silver. When I say that, those prices are based off what they call ETFs. Like if you try to go buy physical gold and silver, it's always way more than what spot price is. It's separate.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. And people will call them premiums or whatever, but like there's been times when the premium for an Eagle's like $20 over spot. It's almost double because the places don't have any. Like, oh, we don't have any of those. And so like it's separate, and that's the way they've been manipulating the price of gold and silver through ETF purchases, especially Chase. And they've actually been found guilty of it and had to pay like fucking $1 billion in fines. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But these same people own a bunch of ETFs of gold and silver. So when they need a margin call, that's instant liquidity. They can sell their paper positions, gold and silver, to cover their margin call. And that's why you'll see a dip. Now, those price dips you really won't see in a physical market because the prices will just stay the same because everybody understands what it is. All the brokers know. They're like, no, I ain't changing the price for that. So that's why.
Very interesting. Good
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
this shit for hours.
it's fascinating, dude. It combines a bunch of different things, like it combines the history, politics that were involved, and the mentality of the common person at the period too.
Well, see, what I find interesting is like when all this would happen, like when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, my dad was like fucking 12. You know what I mean? So like a lot of these is we're getting like, everybody talks about the boomers, the great generation. They're almost all gone now. And they're the last ones that really grew up with real money. My dad was a freaking adolescent. He doesn't know the difference between freaking gold, like $1.71 versus now. He knows he could get a soda for 20 cents, versus $2.25 now. Didn't understand why. So now you're getting a whole generation, like our whole population doesn't really understand how the gold standard worked or what it was and how our currency is created. And like when you get into like reserve banking and like what the banks can really do to create currency, it's like I need to fucking own a bank.
Yeah.
I've really thought about it. I'm like, man, how much do I need to do to start my own bank? Because it's fucking ludicrous what they can do with it. It's crazy.
Like a bank really, like all it is made up of individuals that have their assets there. And if you're somebody that has a lot of assets there or a lot of money within that bank, then you become a board of director. And then you start making decisions on what direction this bank is going. So when they have these policies set in place to where they can't fail, it's essentially like, okay, well, let's say this really rich guy loses a bunch of money because, he has a bunch of loans that he wrote out that like nobody's paying on because, America's like basically set up on a promise to pay and a lot of people can't pay. So like we got to bail them out and make sure that they don't lose any money. And it's like, to me, it's like, isn't that the price of the game,
The fractional reserve banking is nuts. Like you deposit $1,000 with me, legally I could loan out $10,000 worth. based off your $1,000 deposit
Mhm.
to Joe Schmo who wants to go buy a motorcycle and charge interest on it. I didn't do shit.
That bank's worth is all based on the amount of money that they're potentially going to make based on the loans and things that they have written, not based on the actual amount of money that they carry in that bank like it used to be. It's all based on paper.
That's why if everybody goes to the bank, tries to pull the currency out of there, they're screwed because they lent it all out to everybody in the form of mortgages, car loans, whatever. They don't have it.
You go through 3 freaking people like trying to soon they're gonna pull you in a room, darken the room, one light bulb, and be like, "So, you said you were gonna do this work, and I don't see any transactions where somebody else deposited money in here. So, where did that money go?"
Yeah, it's a little. I don't know. It's interesting. Everyone's belting down the hatches. You see it everywhere, and they're gonna raise interest rates 2 more times this year. And then BRICS is going to open up. And when BRICS opens up,
it could be interesting, especially if they start dumping their dollars, right? Because those dollars got to come somewhere. And usually what it'll do, it'll just drop the value of our currency.
Oh,
yeah. But if you teach this, then it's going to cause people to want to buy, gold.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't teach it, then nobody will buy gold, and then everybody will focus on the actual money to where then, if nobody's buying gold, then they can somewhat control what happens with that gold, because they would, if everything becomes a gold standard, then they would just reevaluate what the dollar is based on what gold is, which, therefore we could almost turn in like the Germans at the end of World War I, where wheelbarrow full of $100 bills isn't going to buy you a loaf of bread.
Yeah, hyperinflation. It's ruined many a country.
Welcome to the Weimar. All right, gentlemen. Great episode today.
Yeah.
Next week, topic, any suggestions, or are you going to let me find a rabbit hole to go down? God damn you.
I'm gonna have to work next weekend, so I don't even know if I can do it.
I see. We can't. That's the time for you to just throw out something crazy. But
yeah,
okay. Well, I'll figure it out. I'll probably have Spike Cohen on or something.
Holy fucker. Get your Robert Kennedy Jr. on there.
Oh man, I asked. They probably, I asked right after we did a Flat Earth episode, so I'm probably sure they thought, you know what?
Did you see the video of him doing? He was benching.
Oh yeah, he came out with that like a month ago though.
Yeah, just fucking put it up there. I was like, fucking old man strength.
He's what, 70?
Yeah, he's
69 or 70. He's around there, bro. I like him. It's interesting to follow. I like anyone the media doesn't like. So like right now, the whole theory is he hates Jews, which I think is funny. So,
what did they do?
No, that's what the New York Times came out with an article and said something about. Well, I can pull it up if you guys want me to. Here, it's sort of funny. He's all mad about it, which I would be too, because it had nothing to do with what he said. I just like it when the media sort of goes after someone just because they're scared of them. You can tell when they don't like someone versus they're scared of someone, so it's like more of an attack. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Here, I'll share. I'll share this. He's pretty upset this morning. It's like it's rough. It's great Sunday morning. Shouldn't be having to talk about how you don't hate Jews. What a rough thing to have to talk about on a Sunday morning. You guys see that? All right. Yeah. So right now, this is the thing going on right now is the insinuation of the New York Post and others that as a result of my quoting a peer-reviewed paper on bioweapons, I am somehow anti-Semitic is a disgusting fabrication. I mean, look at this thing. It's God dang it. Tagged a rabbi in it. That's the equivalent of saying I have Jew friends.
Don't tell them you have the original memoirs of fucking Ford in your library.
I do not have the original memoirs of Ford in my
No,
library.
I'm saying Robert Kennedy. You better not say like, "Yeah, I got the original Henry Ford's memoirs." He
Well,
used to
why
write in
wouldn't
the-
you have that book? You know how much that thing is worth?
Yeah, but it's very anti-Semitic.
Well, yeah, it's just because you own a book doesn't believe you believe in it. How many movies do you own, Devin, where the plot is someone gets murdered or raped? Do you now support murder and rape? God, dang it. Get me all riled up.
Depends if they have video of me with my dick in my hand at the time.
Okay. All right, everybody. That's it. That's the cue. We've been on too long.
This is the emergency broadcast.